Most people assume that border security means intercepting illegal crossings, but the technologies being deployed now go way beyond what you can even imagine. Did you know that AI surveillance systems can scan your public social media activity and it can predict whether or not you might be a security threat, even before you reach the border? Homeland Security's implementation of artificial intelligence isn't just watching those trying to enter legally. It's creating digital profiles of millions of ordinary travelers, and that includes US citizens, with almost no oversight or transparency about how this data is going to be used or stored. I'm Evan Goldstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer and a data scientist. I work with business owners to get competitive with artificial intelligence. The US Customs and Border Protection has been empowered by a new federal funding slush fund that's used to pursue advanced AI technologies to monitor residential neighborhoods. It can also be used to deploy sophisticated autonomous AI systems and to acquire capabilities to see through your walls in your house. So this was all from a Customs and Border Protection presentation for an Industry Day summit that was held with private sector vendors. What it's showing is that these technologies are now going to be used in the Trump administration's new, more stringent border enforcement campaign. And the equipment's allowed to be used now hundreds of miles from what was originally considered the border area. Now, this is the funding that came through in the new big, beautiful bill that passed. One of the presentations was titled Advanced AI to Identify and Track Suspicious Activity in the Urban Environment. It talks about the challenges of surveillance in dense residential area and trying to define what constitutes suspicious activity. Now, the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution provide protection against arbitrary police searches, but federal law grants immigration agencies the authority to conduct warrantless detentions and searches within 100 miles of land borders with Canada, Mexico, or the East Coast. So, if you think about it, almost all of our cities are on the coasts. The big cities are on the coasts or near the borders. So across the Southwest, residents in towns like Nogales and Calexico are already being monitored from surveillance towers that are positioned in their neighborhoods. 2014 DHS Border Surveillance Privacy Impact Assessment said that those towers are capturing information about individuals, activities that are beyond the scope of the CBP's authorities. Cameras can watch people entering and leaving a place, can see how they relate to their daily lives in populated areas. Back in 2014, when this report came out, that wasn't of such concern because you would need a human watching all the videos tracking someone. But now with facial recognition and the latest technology, you can track anyone anywhere. And it's not just about tracking anyone. You can track everyone. Now, the automation that Border Patrol is leaning heavily on is computer vision. It's machine learning that excels at pattern matching to find objects in the desert that resemble people, cars, and other items of interest, instead of just requiring crews of human agents monitoring camera feeds and other sensors 24/7. A computer system that's analyzed a lot of photographs of trucks driving through the desert can become effective at identifying similar vehicles in the future. But how do we algorithmically label some human behavior as suspicious, which is more abstract than the idea of a truck? It's got to be based on a data set that it's already fed. And who's making these decisions? This is a backdoor method to profiling. We can avoid racially categorizing people, but at the same time, if there's a statistically higher likelihood that a person of a race would engage in a behavior, then that can then be projected onto people who otherwise wouldn't be considered suspicious. And the computer vision algorithms aren't telling us how they're making their decisions as to decide who or what activity, person, or facial features would be considered. Although Border Patrol Tactical Unit, or BORTAC, on paper defined as existing to execute domestic missions involving terrorism, hostage situations, or high-risk scenarios, but it's been drafted more and more into deportation raids. Now, this BORTAC, which is the agency that these funds are being moved into for AI enhancement, shall we say, is already fairly heavily militarized. A lot of these tools are being justified. So, for instance, the looking through walls tools are being justified as being usable in finding people buried in rubble, which is a good use. And then it can just be used to video people drive around town and look through people's walls and see what's happening inside of a house. It's a real question. If I'm walking around performing some sort of illegal activity, I can be videotaped doing so, and that could be considered fair game in a legal case, let's say. But if I'm inside, do I still have a legal right or a legal reasonable expectation of privacy when these tools exist that can still, without intruding on my privacy physically, crossing my property line, let's say, can videotape my activities inside of a building? Okay, so what's the buzz on social media about all this new funding going towards AI monitoring of human activities by the government? Social media is on fire, and not just in the hashtag discourse kind of way. Over on X and Blue Sky, skepticism is nuclear. People are furious that AI is being weaponized at the border, and it turns every inch of space into a heavily surveilled area where tech bro fantasies of infinite data extraction are becoming everyday policy. There's a lot of, oh, you thought AI was just going to replace your job? It's here to replace your right to anonymity. Now the border isn't just a line, it's an automated, always-on proof that you're either in the system or you're a target. People are showing stories of family being watched, with one viral thread comparing this to your boss installing cameras in your living room, except now it's the government and there's no off switch. TikTok and Instagram are split between full throttle outrage and a weird black comedy. One side is doom posting about algorithmic profiling. A machine deciding who gets stopped or surveilled basically takes in every ugly stereotype that you can imagine. It's amped up by machine learning, it's dialed down. But there's also a nihilistic streak about it, with creators are making skits about trying to smuggle empathy past the border only to get flagged at the throat. In YouTube, go for the big picture. There's the debate where it gets philosophical and a little bit scary, with some users are insisting that AI is doing capitalism's dirty work, turning everyone and every social problem into another excuse for surveillance, and it's all rubber stamped by the logic of efficiency. Other people push back that maybe this is just tech being used how it always is by whoever already controls the levers of power. The real question is, if the algorithm can justify watching you at the border, what about protests? At home, people start tossing out dystopian what-ifs like candy. We can imagine a world where getting on a bus means it tracks your face, your politics, and your worth to the economy. If it sounds wild, that's just China's social credit system. So what does this mean for business owners? Surveillance technologies and systems that are detailed in this episode have immediate applications for mid-sized businesses who are looking to enhance their security, their operations, and their monitoring capabilities, because companies with multiple facilities or warehouses or retail locations could implement a scaled-down version of computer vision systems to monitor inventory movement, to detect unusual patterns in customer behavior, identify safety violations, or shrinkage, right? That's employees stealing supplies. The emphasis on pattern recognition and suspicious activity detection translates into fraud prevention in finance departments and quality control for manufacturing and customer behavior analysis in retail environments like stores. The billions in government funding that are flowing into these AI systems is going to drive rapid innovation and cost reductions in computer vision and pattern recognition and automated monitoring solutions. And that means in the long run that all this technology is going to be available to private sector buyers. Companies that gain significant advantages by adopting this technology in loss prevention and operational efficiency and risk management, but companies that don't are going to be at a competitive disadvantage. But the controversial nature of surveillance, AI, and growing privacy concerns mean that businesses have to be careful to balance efficiency gains against potential risks to their reputations, backlash. So budget considerations in setting these systems up have to include not just the initial software and hardware costs, but the maintenance, the data storage, and legal compliance expenses, as well as we said, company reputation. It's important to ensure that your AI monitoring enhances business operations without creating legal or ethical liabilities.